Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the May 8th, 2024 meeting of the North Andover Finance Committee. I see that we do have a quorum, so I will call this meeting in order at 7:05. I will note that we have member Nancy Sorrow with us via Google Meets tonight. Nancy, can you hear us okay?
Hello.
Hey, Nancy, and Keith Cheney as well. Keith, can you hear us?
I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear both of you. Awesome, thank you.
Excellent.
All right, so because we have two members joining us remotely, I think the only vote we have tonight, scheduled vote we have tonight is for the minutes, so we'll have to do that by roll call. But seeing that we have a quorum and everybody is here and ready to go, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, everybody. The next item of business is public comment. Do we have anybody here for public comment? We do not. Okay. All right. So the first order of business we're going to do is Article. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go a little bit out of order tonight. We're just going to take the second thing first, and we're going to talk about Article 28, which is the MBTA communities. Our planning board chair, Eitan Goldberg, is here. Also, our town manager is here. Our finance director is here. There's quite a few people here tonight. So I just want to give a brief explainer, and then we'll invite Eitan up, or Eitan can come up while I'm giving a brief explainer. But this article centers on the compliance with the MBTA Communities Act, which was signed into law in 2021. It requires MBTA communities to allow multifamily housing, such as apartments and condos, to be built near T-stops with special permits. There are 177 communities in Eastern Mass that are subject to the law. Communities that both host MBTA directly, the service, and cities or towns that abut those are sort of encompassed within the law. So while this is strictly speaking, I think, a zoning article, so not something we would normally have a recommendation for, if we don't pass the bill, there is or could be some negative ramifications for the town. State leaders have stressed that compliance is mandatory and that communities that fail to comply stand to lose out on millions of state grants potentially, which could impact our budgets in years to come. And I know that the AG, with the backing of the governor, has sued at least one community that voted this down at town meeting. So given that there could be an impact on outlying budget years, I figured it was at least something we should learn more about, and then we can sort of get a better understanding today, let people sit with that information for a little bit, and then at our next meeting, right before town meeting, we can decide whether we're going to make a recommendation or not make a recommendation, and if we are, what that recommendation might be. So with all of that said, welcome Eitan Goldberg, chair of the North Andover Planning Board. I will let you kick it off.
Sure, hi. It's my first finance committee meeting. So.
Well, welcome. We'll try and take it easy on you. We're normally a nice, cozy bunch.
I'm not going to make any comments. I'm just going to keep moving.
That's fair.
Okay. I know most of you, so I'm going to. All right. So MBTA, high level of what it is. I think Donovan did a good job explaining it. It's a 2021 law enacted by the Baker administration in an effort to get all cities and towns to produce more housing. The interesting part, although it's an effort to produce more housing, it's not actually a mandate to produce housing. What it is a mandate to create zoning districts. So anyone along the MBTA kind of path, depending on how close you are and how large you are, has to make certain zoning. So our requirements are to zone for multifamily housing by right. It cannot be age restricted or bedroom restricted. Must be theoretically able to accommodate at least 15 units per acre. It's encouraged that the zoning districts have reasonable access to transit, hence the MBTA communities, and it requires, again, a creation of zoning districts. So what they do is they figure out how many must have a capacity for multifamily units equal to 10% of the community's entire housing stock. So for us, we're required to create a zoning district that could accommodate 1,191 units. There was a large public engagement process where different locations in town were talked about, discussed, both with members of the public at planning board meetings, at select board meetings, at public forums. Lots of different areas were discussed. Ultimately, came up with 2 districts, being at Market Basket Plaza as well as at Osgood Landing. These were recommended. The bylaw with these were recommended unanimously by the planning board and by the select board. Our bylaw has been brought to the state. They've reviewed it. They've said it's compliant. So if this bylaw passes at town meeting, we will be in compliance. Basically, they've done a preliminary review, and they say that it appears to be compliant. Financially, so if we are not in compliance by December 31st, 2024, we lose access to grant funding. Our town manager and community development have basically looked at all the grants we've received recently, and there's basically $6.8 million we've received in grants that would be, those types of grants would be threatened by this. As Donovan stated, there have been towns such as Milton that were not in compliance, that they've either been sued or they've been, grants have been pulled back. So it's not just a threat from the state. It's actually happening that if
That
you're
was
not
my
in
question.
compliance.
So they've clawed back grants that they've given this fiscal year?
No, so what it is that Milton was doing as I understand it, had done studies for a project, and then there was future,
Contingent upon future grants?
right, that there were grants that were going to be used to then fund that project, and those funds are not being made available to them because they're not in compliance with the law. So the funding and taking away is real. I believe, and Melissa can speak to this as well, housing choice, we're a housing choice community. It doesn't necessarily give us direct grants, but it gives us priority for certain grants. It also gives us priority for better interest rates, things like that. So there are grants that the state has said, if you're not in compliance, you're not going to get. There are grants and funding that the state has said you're going to go to the back of the line.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are other places where things are discretionary. If you're in compliance with the law, you probably move up. If you're not in compliance with the law, you probably move down. So there are ones that are definitely out there, and then there's more that, certainly could be threatened. There have been a lot of town meetings are happening now, so there are votes happening, this week, next week, throughout. There have been about 45 towns that have passed their zoning. There have been about 6 to 8 that have said no. I will also say that their financial aspects, the 2 places that we've chosen, the Osgood Landing and at Market Basket, there's no real, there's not a strong likelihood of imminent development at those places. So there's not, in terms of negative finances, in terms of if there were to be, more town services, none of that would be imminent with these locations. I mean, generally we see positive financials when we have larger complexes and things like that, between building permits and taxes and things like that. But there also would be with these, there's not really any, I think, imminent to be built there that we can tell. So I don't see any negatives if it passes, and there are certainly strong negatives if it doesn't pass.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question before I open it up to everybody else. But I know I lost my train. Oh, I just want to be crystal clear on this. If I understand what you said earlier correctly, this is not, you're not permitting builds in these locations. You're just changing the zoning to allow or to make it easier for permits in the future?
So there would be multifamily housing allowed in these 2 districts by right. It's what's called an overlay district, meaning all of the zoning that currently exists there would stay.
Yep.
And what we do is we add another zoning district on top of it, like a layer. So if someone wanted to, at, let's say, Market Basket, do what they're doing now, which is a 2 to 3 year project where Kohl's and Market Basket are switching places, and they're redesigning, and they're doing the parking lots over and things like that. If that came next year, they could still do that, right? And they obviously have already been permitted, but if that project came, they could still do that. Anything that's happening, that's allowed currently at Osgood, so the business, there is residential that's currently allowed there, that could all still go forward. But you could choose to go under this zoning district, which may have some different height allowances, different density allowances, things like that. But it allows you to build as of right, though we've baked into it a lot of things that are normally under site plan that does allow us to control some of the heights, some of the setbacks, some of the uses. And so any actually permits under this bylaw would actually come to the planning board for permits, but it does allow, it's a little easier than your normal site plan review.
Gotcha. Thanks. Anybody else have questions?
Just a quick question
Chris?
on Market Basket. Now, you're not talking about lands around it, you're talking actually where the store is itself?
The whole lot.
The whole, so the parking lot and the whole thing?
Correct.
So for someone to build an apartment complex there, then what would have to happen is Market Basket is gonna say like, see you later, we're not here anymore?
Well, so
Or- So,
I can't, right, so I can't, they don't, like, when Market Basket was before us for the reconstruction,
yeah,
we asked them, do you guys would have any interest in doing it? And specifically, I think I asked them about building up over their buildings. I think
I see.
so.
Oh,
One
I
of the things that
understand.
the bylaw allows is to encourage mixed use, is to allow first floor commercial with residential above.
Oh,
So I think actually theoretically what they could do is put 2 or 3 floors above, right, above.
oh, that's interesting.
Or put 2 or 3 floors above a parking garage,
Right.
right, things like that.
But so what this happens with this zoning, if I'm getting this correctly, is that since it would be an overlay and by right, that they wouldn't have to come before town meeting
Correct.
to do that, because that part would be done. But nevertheless, there still would be the same arduous process in front of the planning board to have anything like that happen.
It would have to meet the bylaw. I mean, it's not as arduous as some special permits because it is by right, but it does have a good amount baked in
Yeah.
that
So
has
there's-
to be.
The oversight is still as, I mean, it's intensive now. I don't care what you're building in town. You still have, it is.
Yes.
So it's not like, okay, that's good, thank you.
I had a question. I know there used to be an overlay at Osgood.
Still there.
Is it still there? Okay.
So it's just
I
technically an
didn't- just-
overlay of an overlay?
Just to make clear, we have lots of overlays
Yeah.
around. That doesn't mean that
It's a sandwich.
anything happens with.
Correct. That overlay's been in effect since 2007.
Right. That
Um,
allows
multifamily.
multi-use, right?
Yep.
So there is already, in effect, an
Yes.
overlay that allows pretty much a similar thing at that same site.
Correct. It wouldn't be exactly the same unit numbers, but
Right.
basically the same thing. Correct.
Okay. Brianna, Eva?
I think
Oh, I'm sorry.
I saw Nancy raise
Yeah,
her
we'll
hand.
get,
Sorry.
okay. That's okay. Go ahead, Nancy.
It seems like the location, particularly the Market Basket location, is unlikely to take advantage of this zoning. I'm just wondering, was that kind of on purpose to pick a location that would be less likely to do it? Were any other locations considered?
So that's a great question. Pretty much every location in town was considered. And part of the thought, it was that it doesn't seem likely to be built now, but it could be something 10 years, 5, 10, 15 years. This is our thought. Again, there's no one's told us they're going to do this, but you think about some of the changes in retail and some of the difficulties that retail stores are having. Now, Market Basket does great. I'm told that Kohl's actually is one of the best ones in the state. But, some of the retail plazas just in the area do tend to struggle. So it could change. So it seems like it's something, it has great access to 495. It's already got the MEVA line. It's not, although there is a neighborhood right behind it, it's not kind of like in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So Royal Crafts was a place we considered, right? It's a place that has been proposed for housing in the past, but was shot down. So one of the things we're considering it mostly for kind of future development, since we've had a lot of development in the recent. We were looking more down the road of what would be a good place to have this kind of down the road. Also, we really need to get something passed, so we were trying not to put in locations that would be controversial. Downtown would be, in my opinion, a great place to have a certain amount of by right housing, but it's difficult to kind of zone downtown. Lots of a lot of different small lots, things like that. We looked at, some of the locations that have already been built with multifamily, but again, we went through painstaking detail to kind of make those special permanent districts, and it didn't make sense to kind of overlay those. So this was kind of designed with a couple purposes in mind, places that kind of meet the goals of the state in terms of they're close to transit and highways and things like that, that they're not going to be most likely immediate development, but would be good for future development, and something that we also need to have kind of larger lots. We didn't think it made sense to have a lot of different small lots, because that gets kind of tricky.
Okay, well, I appreciate the explanation. I know you're trying to thread a needle here.
Yeah, that's
so
it.
So I do understand.
Thanks, Nancy. Anything else?
No, thanks.
Keith, anything from you?
No, nothing from me. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Eva or Brianna?
So I know, like, the understanding of it that I have is we're just passing a vote to zone and not to build. And the building part, like you said, could be 10, 15, or it could be never.
It could be never. I mean, this allows it. I don't want to overstate it.
Yeah.
If we pass zoning this year that allows it, they could turn around and either of these properties could turn around and build next year. They
Right.
have that ability. They also have the ability to build never. And given the two locations, it seems like it's a lot more likely than that. I mean, again, it would be up to the owners and to do what they want in the future. So this, again, yeah, you're right. This allows it. I think the odds are much further in the future, or that it doesn't get built. I mean, usually when we come to town meeting with these kind of bylaws, there's a plan in place and there's a project in place. And we're telling you, this is what we want to build. That's not this. That was, that was Amazon. That was Royal Crest. That was when, before with Avalon, with the, with Osgood, even going back, usually it's a plan. This is not that. This is just zoning that the state is mandating that we put into place with threats if we don't. So I think Nancy's kind of put it, we were trying to thread a needle of, we do want something that is, could provide housing in the future, and that would be, be sustainable and have the infrastructure in place. So we don't want to just throw it somewhere where the infrastructure wouldn't be in place if someone chose to build,
Yeah.
right? We wanted somewhere where if they chose to build, that it would work for the town, but also places that we don't think are unnecessarily imminent. And with that being said, if someone comes up with something and says, hey, actually, this location might be better in the future, we could amend this when we have a plan to include somewhere in a different location. But these seem the safest and most strategic locations to use right now to be in compliance. And if we need to change them in the future, we can change them as long as we stay in compliance.
Good. Melissa, would you mind stepping up? Because I just wanted, I'm just curious if you know any more about the potential, if any other municipalities, Eitan very nicely mentioned that at least Milton has had some funding, not clawed back, but taken away, I guess. Have you heard that from the 5 or 6 other communities as well? Or is it too early?
It's too early. So they've all been very recent over the last really couple of weeks. And so I don't think there's been a chance for any of them to have an application either turned down
Denied
or taken
or,
away.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see what happens because the capital bond bill is currently ongoing right now. We've got MassWorks open, MVP's open, so it'll be interesting to see what happens as those come forward.
Yeah. Okay, but I just want to be clear. It was your understanding that by not passing this, it would, or potentially, I guess, I'd love to know the answer to that, but you may not have, you don't have that crystal ball. Impact funding in the future.
That's absolutely true.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the paperwork that's been put out from the state, they even talk about Mass DOT capital projects.
Yep.
What does that mean? Does that include the tip? I mean,
Right.
we've got 114 on the tip.
Yep.
Right? There's not a clarification of what that means, and I don't think anyone really knows.
Okay.
And so I think that we will see penalties and penalizing for communities that do not.
So there's a significant risk to outlying budgets years if we didn't do this.
Absolutely, or just our inability to continue to improve infrastructure. These aren't projects we could ever take on our own.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
litigation costs too. I mean, if you get sued, I mean, and this is so new that it's not like you have a template for how to defend this, so you're.
Well, I wasn't even gonna get into the litigation.
Right, I mean,
But you're
it's
right.
not something
Yeah.
you want to encourage, and it seems to be that these mandates, it seemed in the past, the state has mandated things, and if people didn't do it, they said, that's too bad.
Right.
People didn't do it. It doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Like, they're going out of their way to say, if you don't do this, we're going to punish you in some way, and that honestly seems to, for good or for bad, seems to be the way of the
Yeah.
future.
Okay. All right.
Do you know how many communities are required to do this? It's not every community in the state?
Not,
That
is it
makes
180?
Uh,
170 something.
170, and so, so like
177.
a third have passed it,
Mhm.
45, that's my math.
And not, and when you have to pass it by is phased based on where you are. So like if you were like right on it, on the subway, you had to do it by last year. Most of the towns are for this year. There are some that are for the end of next year. If they're only like adjacent, if they're
Right.
like,
Oh, so that's why it's a 2021 law, and it's only coming to fruition here.
well, and a lot of it was also, they had to put in the kind of the guidelines.
The rules
in
and
place,
regs
the
around
rules
it.
and regulations in
Yeah.
place.
Well, I, for one, I really appreciate the planning board's meticulous and careful discussion over about where we could do this to really make it work so that we could be in compliance with a law that we want to be in compliance with, particularly now. I mean, it's huge that we don't lose funding anywhere.
And like
So-
you, they're all volunteers, so it's very
That's right.
impressive to see
No,
that
it is.
commitment.
It really is
Yeah.
impressive, and it's very much appreciated.
All right, good. Everybody all set? All right, thank you both. I appreciate it. Melissa, I don't know if you want to stay, yeah? Thanks, Eitan.
Let's see if this works.
And thank you, Jean, too. Pam, do you want to come up too? And Dave? If you want to, you're more than welcome. Yeah.
I plugged in my HDMI cord. It's not
Yeah,
working good.
so let me let me set the table for this one too. So I think we are all aware of, certainly we're aware of the budget deficit that was found in the fiscal year 24 school budget. We've had meetings about that. We've had meetings about that impact on the fiscal year 25 budget. And I know that we're all aware that these meetings have been happening in the background to make the adjustments and to address these deficits. Pam, our acting superintendent, Melissa, our town manager, and Dave Brown, the chair of our school board, have come tonight to talk about, give us an update, I guess, on the fiscal year 24 and 25 budgets, where they are, what they've done, what's it looking like, and if there's any new news, I guess. So I would invite any one of the three of you to start. I don't know that you've coordinated anything, so
We have a presentation. It's
Oh,
similar
perfect.
to the presentation that we gave to the select board Monday, with some updates as of today. So thank you for having us.
oh, you're welcome.
First, I'll just say that I want to remind people that the fiscal year 25 budget as presented is not changing.
Right.
Our number is what our number is. We are not changing the warrant article. We're moving forward with what we presented to all of you back in the January, February timeframe. Our presentation tonight addresses what we're doing to ensure that fiscal year 25 is balanced and how we're staying on track for the rest of the year. So I just want to review the fiscal year 24 plan and then kind of fill you in that we did have some new information come to light today. So unfortunately this morning, Pam's team and my team got together and realized that there is several more bills that had not been accounted for in the original appropriation deficit. So, that was
So an additional
an
deficit?
additional deficit, yes, an
Okay.
additional deficit of $1,013,177.80 that we found out. Yes, that's what Pam said. We all had that same reaction, but we're okay now, right?
Yeah, we're okay.
Yeah, so, we had an initial same reaction. Thankfully, we all worked really hard together today to come up with some solution. So we're looking at this right now as where we kind of are today, but we also have a solution for the 509. So we're okay. They,
So, I'm sorry,
Yes.
just so I can understand, so the unbolded white,
original
font
plan.
is the original plan?
Yeah.
And then the bolded is,
The bolded italic is new for today, that
Okay.
489. So we did also find out today that we did qualify for the circuit breaker relief funding from the state.
great,
And that's $489,469. The negative part about that is that it will affect us $160,000 next year.
Okay.
So we'll get $160,000 less next year, and that's just something that we'll be paying attention to as we start next year. But it is a huge relief, and we're very thankful to the state, and the lieutenant governor reached out to us directly to make sure that we knew that she was looking at this, and all of our state legislators have been great. So we're very happy to report that. But that left us kind of at 11 a.m. this morning with that $509,000 number. So working with our team today, we are going to recommend that we basically repurpose all of these opera projects. So some of them have just a small balance left because either the project is done or they maybe had a few more things they wanted to purchase. Some of them, unfortunately, we're going to have to cancel altogether in order to make the budget. So we will be asking the select board on Tuesday night to reappropriate $300,000 from the streetscape improvement plan for downtown. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply for MassWorks for that, or I have committed to Andrew Shapiro, who almost cried, that we would put that in the fiscal year 26 capital budget. We were gonna take $100,000 from the small business support program, which will leave us with $100,000. We had originally appropriated $300,000 into that account. We used $100,000, $89,000 for support for businesses that were affected by the August 8th storms. And we had planned to use the last $200,000 as like a small grant program. So we will be reducing that to $100,000. We will be reducing one staff member for the bookmobile. So we originally had planned to be able to appropriate for 2 staff members for 2 years for the bookmobile. The bookmobile is currently being wrapped with the stickers and will be rolling out literally soon. So we'll have only 1 staffer there now. We were able to take this, I mean, it is at this point almost ridiculous, but $55 from outside professional services, at $10.71 from radio encryption. There's a $3,000 left from the special education audit. There's $15,000 from the 400 Great Pond Road Steering Committee, $1,100 from school digital radios, $1,400 from the AED training the schools did, $5,000 from the town's AED Fields project, which is done. And if you've seen the AEDs at the fields, it's awesome. $7 from the police cameras and $589 from the animal shelter emergency supplies. And so when we bring all of that together, it gets us, and we also had an additional $167 that one of our wonderful department heads had already said, I can turn this back. It gives us enough to cover the appropriation deficit, a small cushion, and also help the school committee fund the 2 reviews that they're going to be doing.
okay.
So this will get us beyond the point. I think after this, though, I don't know
can't-
where else we would go. No. And, you know, the issue that we run into is that when you run an illegal appropriation deficit, so think of it, you have to think of it kind of 2 different ways. You've got a budget deficit when you don't have enough money to pay for your next year, right?
Right.
But when you're in the fiscal year and you're spending on something that's not snow and ice or a DOR allowed emergency, it's called a legal appropriation deficit. And when that happens, basically what DOR does at the end of the year is they kind of beat you up twice. So they'll say, not only can you not raise your tax levy next year by whatever the deficit is, but also we're taking it out of your free cash. So it's a stinky way to end up, and we don't want to end up there, and we're working really hard to not end up there. So we're okay today, and we'll continue working together over the next 75 days till July 15th when we close the books to make sure that we end the fiscal year in a positive way.
Well, I appreciate that, and I thank you. I think it is important. I know we all sort of chuckled when we see $55.79 or $7.07, but I also think it's important that we see that we're getting every nook and cranny, every nickel, dime, and penny from wherever we can to cover this unfortunate addition. I think that, you know, we said this before, and I think everybody here knows this, but I'm going to say it again. This has had a tremendous effect on this budget, this 24 fiscal year, and your projections, or not projections, your plan for 25. So I want to thank you, Pam and Melissa, and your teams for being able to make this work. Because, to your point, we would be in trouble if we have to go into non-sanctioned deficit spending. So thank you. Anybody have any questions? Oh, go ahead, Brianna.
You said this leaves us a small cushion.
Yes.
What's small?
It'll end up being about $100,000
Okay.
at the end. And so some of these accounts, our department heads got a memo at like 5:30, letting them know that this was happening. So some of, like, they may call me tomorrow and say, but I already spent the 80 fields, and like that may move things around a little bit if a bill just hasn't come in yet. But we're pretty confident that most of these are closed and done, and then the 300, the 100, and the 85, which are like the kind of the big pieces, those are projects that unfortunately we're just going to have to end. So they won't happen at all. So those we know are happening. So.
Okay. Anybody else? Regina?
Yeah, I mean, this is awesome that you were able to find this money and deal with this. I'm so thankful that you were able to. My bigger question is how confident are you that next week we won't have this exact same meeting to say we found another $1 million? Like, this is just.
So
really,
I don't know that I could say that
I
we
know.
are. I wish I
I know
could.
you
You know,
can, which is just-
I keep thinking of it that I explain it as a house is on fire, and I'm putting the fire out from the outside, and Pam's putting it out from the inside, right? And so we're working together to put the fire out. And so we are coming at it from every angle we can think of, but things do happen, right? So there's 4 payrolls left, right? We know we have to make 4 more payrolls. We can have no emergencies, right? We cannot approve any POs that are not already encumbered.
Right,
And so those are the
that's
things
what
we're
I'm-
doing
yes, like,
right
you're,
now.
You're not, like, I know we talked about a freeze on all the
Yeah.
municipal spending. I mean, there's a freeze in the school spending, right? We're not
Correct.
spending another dollar on another pencil, another book, another anything, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and we're helping maneuver that, because it's, you know,
Yeah.
this graduation will go forward. That's an expense that will be happening, but we're really monitoring everybody's spending right now.
And these discoveries came with the work that you two have been doing, and nothing to do with even an outside auditor that we're hoping will happen. I mean, so
Yeah,
there's more scrubbing to be done. Thank goodness for your work. I mean, it's, again,
we're very lucky to have the teams that we have.
Yes.
And the supports that we have.
We
Yes.
are really fortunate.
Yeah.
The town manager, Melissa, and her team have been great in
Yes.
working with us, and the people that are here. Our plan is to meet daily, as much as we need to, being really careful. The more eyes looking at it. We have done the same thing. We have no POs, no spending, no extra hours. I think, as you remember, when we came before, we talked about some of the pressure points that were harder to control, and then some of the ones that were challenging, but maybe within our control, in looking
Yeah.
at some of those extra hours and the salaries. I have sent that direct message to the people that work, our budget managers as well.
yeah.
And now it's just moving forward and
Right.
sticking to that.
I don't know that you could do anything else.
Mhm.
We do have the bids for the review that we're gonna vote on tomorrow night.
Okay,
So-
oh, terrific, good.
So I had a question. I wanted to probe you on that a little bit, and I realized that you have a meeting tomorrow, so you
Right.
can't, this is all just, I'm going to try to make it as general as possible so that we don't, Melissa, you said that there is funding for whatever it is they may or may not decide to do. Can you, other than what I've seen written on your agenda, is there any more clarity you can give me on what that is?
On the reviews?
Yeah.
Yes, well, we have to, we.
So,
we
not,
have-
so what, but what is on your agenda? How about that?
Okay, so there's two reviews on the agenda, right? One's a personnel review and one is a financial review.
Okay.
And there are two different firms.
Okay.
That bid on each one.
Yeah.
And so we will present those bids and
And if they're approved,
Yeah.
there is the money to
Yes.
fund. Okay.
right, and previously, the committee approved me to work with the town manager to solicit those bids.
Yep, perfect.
So that, we had that
Yeah.
permission already, based on, I don't know, meetings are coming fast now, but a recent
Understood.
meeting gave me that authority to do that, so we did that. We've gotten bids for each one.
Yep.
And tomorrow night, we'll.
You'll bring those bids before the committee.
Committee
and-
and
Okay,
they
perfect.
vote. Yeah.
That's all I was looking for.
And they're all both able to start soon, and both have agreed to quick timelines, so, yeah, so we're, yep, yes.
Okay. All right, Nancy or Keith on the phone, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just have one question. First of all, I really do applaud the creativity in resolving this this additional gap. So thank you to the team for doing that. And I'm sorry if I missed it, but was there any underlying cause to this $1 million? Was it also a salary issue, or
No, it appears to
any
be,
explanation for it?
it appears right now that it is actually in-district and out-of-district bills that had not yet been encumbered or accounted for.
Just bills that showed up?
Their tuitions.
Tuition bills.
Oh.
Special education.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I understand,
Okay.
all right.
Okay, thank you.
And did they show up after the fact, or were they, you thought you'd pay?
I don't
yeah.
have an answer to that
Okay.
question.
That's,
I don't
I'm
think we
just
know.
curious.
Yeah, I don't think we know.
I guess one point of clarity, though, that there are no new categories
Right.
discovered.
No.
These are just
Yeah.
bigger numbers in the
These
same
are things that
categories.
have been, were sitting somewhere, let's say they were sitting in the
Additions.
drawer, open the drawer, what? Like that.
Well, I don't think they know is the question, but
We don't know.
We don't know.
Okay.
Right, but it's not a new, it's not a new
Right.
category of,
Yeah, okay, here comes Lynn, so she
Right.
can tell me,
Okay,
be
there you
quiet,
go.
Christine.
thank you.
Working with the school staff today, they weren't discovered bills. They were
Okay.
bills that they knew they had to pay, but they didn't have the funding to do it.
I
Didn't
see.
account for it.
And didn't account for it in
I
their
see.
calculation.
I see,
Okay, so they
Oh.
weren't new. They were the tuition and the NRT, which is the busing.
Transportation.
I see.
Transportation,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
I
they
don't
just-
want it to perceive that they didn't, you know, they weren't hiding or they weren't putting
Yeah,
the
right.
bills
No,
in
no,
a
no, no,
jar
no,
or
no,
anything.
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
get that,
I
I
just,
get
yeah,
that.
they knew they had them, they just didn't have the funding.
Yeah.
And they needed to
But
get
they didn't
funding
account
sources.
for them in the first go-around.
Not in the deficit,
Correct.
no.
Okay.
But what does that mean if you?
Well, but I guess I don't understand that because,
Well, they knew what, they have the POs encumbered, and they had enough encumbered to get them to a certain point, and these bills were not a part of the calculation.
So just like an error in calculation?
Yeah, these are probably the May and the June bills
Okay.
that are gonna be coming.
Okay.
Can Nancy follow? Nancy, did you want to follow up?
yeah, so there were bills that were known about but not factored into the original calculation.
Yes.
Right, because they hadn't received them yet, right. These are the calculations, I believe, to increase the POs for the May and the June transportation and tuitions that need to be paid to get them to the end of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead,
So-
Regina.
So when we have a student out of district
Mhm.
and we figure out where we're going to send that student, I'm assuming, but correct me if I'm wrong, that district says, okay, it's gonna be 10,000 or 20,000 or whatever for the school year for this student? Is that accurate? I guess I'll start.
So,
Okay.
yes and
Like
no.
we-
So it depends on, if you know a student starts in the beginning of the year, then yes, that would be accurate. If a student comes to us mid-year that we weren't planning for, then those transportation costs and other things are not something that we would have factored in.
That makes sense.
Right, not factored in, but at that point,
At that point, you
at
would
the
know
midpoint,
going forward
you
what
still,
that
when you
might
make
look
the
like.
arrangement with the new school that they're gonna go to, you say, okay, now it's gonna be half of a year tuition, so it's gonna be 10,000 or whatever. At that point, we budget for the entire cost of that student, right? We have to work them in our budget, we can't just, be like, well, we'll figure it out.
We should, when we find out we have a cost that we know is going to carry through the year, what should happen is it should be encumbered. So that
Right.
you know where you're running for the year.
Right. That's
Because
great.
they didn't
But it
have the
just wasn't-
funding to do that.
They
They
didn't
didn't do
encumber
it.
it. Right. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely need it.
This is the
We
sort of.
definitely need a
yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Yes.
That cannot be allowed, like, we
Right,
can't
so-
not encumber something going like that, that's.
Yeah, so this is all part,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes,
but this
that's
is all
all
part of
the
what our
review.
study is gonna
Yes.
produce
Okay.
for us, is a set of things we need to now do that we haven't been doing,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
The-
And
Wow.
for, it's difficult for us because we don't have the insider information.
Yes, I know.
Right, so
know.
we're trying very much to be solution-based at this point,
Yeah.
and then let the review
Appreciate
come
that.
forward.
Yeah, and we
and
appreciate
Figure out
Yeah.
Yeah.
how, how we
Very
do
much.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all want that, and we
Yeah.
all applaud that. I think sometimes, in our mind as we're hearing this information, we get asked,
Yeah.
our inner self says why, and it comes
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
We've had 6 hours to absorb this. You've
Fair
only
enough.
had like 20 minutes.
Fair enough. No, but,
I'm not meaning to grill you.
You're
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I guess I just can't.
no, and I don't think we can say enough.
Well, I
We
think if you
appreciate you guys coming forward, working together to do this. And I interrupted you, Pam, I
No,
apologize.
I was just gonna say, it's been a pressure point, right? So
Yeah.
I haven't been as close to them. My position before I stepped into this position didn't
Right.
have me as closely to it, but we've known it's a pressure point. So I think if you know it's a pressure point, it's, it sort of goes back to what we've talked about before.
Yeah, good. All right, Keith, any questions from you?
No, thank you, guys.
Okay.
Do you want me to
Eva-
keep going on the
Oh.
presentation? There's
Oh
so
my
much
gosh.
more.
I'm so sorry.
I was like, I can keep going. I mean, I'm happy to go home, but
I apologize.
we'll talk about 25, and then we'll
Yes,
be, I
I
promise,
didn't even,
good.
I'm so sorry.
You're fine. I don't want to undersell what we're doing and then have everybody be like, what happened?
Yeah.
This chart just shows the budgeted amount in the blue for each year, and then the red on what was actually spent each year. And it kind of shows, I think, in a lot of ways, how we ended up where we are today, because we really were spending the next year's increase in the year before. And that's for a lot of different reasons, but what you're looking at here is probably mostly because of our ESSER funding from COVID. And so you've heard me talk about how something very similar happened back in like 2010, that everyone had all these federal grants coming in, they were spending, they were using them on staff, and then when those grants went away, we saw a very similar thing happen. If you remember correctly, our free cash at that point plummeted down to $15,000, right? Because they then decided to use that free cash to offset what was happening. And so that's a lot of how we ended up here. So if you look at our fiscal year 24 number that was actually spent, it's insanely close to what the budgeted amount for fiscal year 25 is. So you can see why it would feel like you're not getting an increase every year, or why you're struggling to move forward. So we have 2 plans laid out. We have a preferred plan, and then we have Plan B. We would like to move forward with the preferred plan, and we are in a position where we can now move forward with that. So this is the plan that we have for fiscal year 25 in order to reduce excess school spending and bring forward a balanced budget. So one side of this chart is additions and revenues, and the other side is reductions. On the addition and revenue side, we've committed to having a $220,000 Medicaid transfer at town meeting. As you know, Medicaid money is money that the schools bring in by filling out particular paperwork each year. $220,000 is what we anticipate will continue to come in and that they would be eligible for. Moving forward, we've had discussions about using that as part of our reserve for the school department, and we'll continue to talk about that. The second revenue source that we've offered them for fiscal year 25 is the opioid settlement funds. So we have about $400,000 in opioid settlement funds right now. We have a special revenue account that we have formed to hold those accounts. It has to be spent in a very specific way, and 2 of those specifications are to support school-based services and to support greater access to mental health services and supports for young people, including services providing in school. And so I certainly think that there's many things that they do that this would be able to help offset. We know that homeless reimbursement is anticipated to increase by $40,000, and the school committee has been told about a plan to increase preschool tuitions by $153,000.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Sure.
What is the portion of paying tuition students to non-paying tuition students for preschool?
I don't know the answer to that. It might be for every 2, we have to have 1, but they have to have peer models in the school. But I can find out the answer for you.
Okay, yeah, and I guess my question is, do we expect that the peer models, the ones that are paying tuition, that enrollment number to go down with a tuition increase?
I don't expect it to, even with the tuition, and for when preschool is really pretty much already set. I think even with the increase, we looked at our neighboring towns, and we looked at some of the independent preschools, we're still below what they would charge.
Okay. And then we have a list of reductions that we're going to make. So the plan is to reduce stipends by $65,000, to decrease IT expenses by $40,000 with a plan to apply for grants to offset that decrease. We will be offering a separation incentive program, which I'm going to talk about more in the next slide, because we have a tentative agreement, unless Dave's already signed it, with the, he has, okay. with the
No, I haven't.
Not yet, we have a
I
tentative
haven't
agreement.
had a
with-
second to do
That's
it.
all right, I get it. We have a tentative agreement with the teachers for that, and I'll get a little bit into what that program looks like. And the funding for that is actually going to be the middle school salary reserve. So as you know, we created a salary reserve in the town's budget of $700,000 that we anticipated transferring to the schools once the middle school teachers are ready to come on. That's really not going to be for most of this year. Because the way it's going to work is that they're going to finish the addition, they're going to move the teachers that are in the original building into the addition and then do the renovation. So it's a phased program. So I'm comfortable using that salary reserve to pay for the separation incentive program because it's a one-time use. So it's not like we're creating additional structural deficit. And the plan through that salary reserve is to reduce 16 TAs, 5.5 teachers, and 1 administrative assistant. So just tell you a little bit about the voluntary separation incentive plan. Again, we do have a tentative agreement on this right now. It will only be open to full-time, non-appointed school employees in certain groups. That's basically an incentive to end service with the town. It'll be voluntary, but you will be unable to collect unemployment, which is a big savings to the town because we are self-insured for unemployment. So that basically means that when someone goes on unemployment, we end up paying 2/3 of their salary. Yep. And it can be for up to 2 years now with the current unemployment system. So this is a huge benefit to get people to take the incentive and leave on their own. This would start on May 15th, and we'd have it open for a month. It can't go to somebody who's already announced they're leaving or has already been told they're leaving. And it does not get added to anyone's base or impact retirement in any way. Whether it's a new employee or a long-term employee, we still see savings due to the unemployment and the insurance costs of an employee leaving service. We have agreed to an incentive of $35,000 for teachers, $25,000 for clerical, and $12,000 for teaching assistants.
What is a non-appointed school employee?
So, for instance, the superintendent's appointed.
I see.
Yes.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
The amounts that you said, that's the money that they would get if they would.
That's the money they would get if they leave service, yes. Mhm.
Okay.
I have done this in the past in a similar situation around 2010, when we, in the city of Everett, not in schools, but with town employees, we ended up avoiding all layoffs by offering the incentive. So I'm hopeful that we'll see some movement here as well. It would be very beneficial to everyone to see that.
Very creative,
Thank you.
really.
And then we have Plan B, so if we don't end up having the middle school reserve as an option, what we would do is we'd use that middle school reserve to basically spread layoffs off over 2 years. It's not ideal, and it does not address any of the unemployment costs.
Yeah.
So Plan A is really the preferred plan. I feel like at this point we could probably just throw Plan B out the window, but we're going to keep talking about it. But Plan A is really where we are right now. So does anybody have any questions on that part?
Does the school committee have to vote on this, or do you just have to sign off on this, Dave?
Well,
I think I just have to sign off on it,
yeah,
right?
since we ended up doing an MOA with the teachers,
Oh, that's
we
right.
will need their
Okay.
signature, their
Okay.
signature, but it is an administrative function, so
Good.
Pam and I and some of our team have managed to get to a great point with the teachers, and they were wonderful to work with.
It will still also be open to administration, but they're not part of the MOA because they're not part of the bargaining
I
units.
see. Okay,
So for instance, if you had a principal or
Yeah.
okay.
Or a
So it's open to them as well?
It is,
And they get the same number the teachers get, or?
teachers.
they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 16
I'm sorry.
TAs, can you talk a little bit about those teachers' assistants and the impact to the students, if any?
So we obviously will be servicing our students who have service minutes on their IEP or service delivery grid, and safety and security. We'll take that into consideration. But by restructuring the way we do class lists, by restructuring some of the schedule of the school day, we believe we can reduce the 16 teaching assistants and still meet the needs of our students.
Okay, so none of these TAs were a result of post-COVID SEL or other needs related to COVID?
Well, I think these are the 16 TAs that they talked about that they had hoped to reduce for this school year and have kept them along, based on what the needs of the children were. So what I'm saying is that we have, in order to do what was planned, we are restructuring the class, this daily schedule. We'll restructure the way that we comprise our class lists, and we will use some of the other funding to support the SEL needs of our students, so that we can confidently reduce 16 teaching assistants and not have it affect the service delivery or compromise the support that students receive.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And, sorry,
No, you're
the
good.
five teachers, is that, like,
5.5 teachers are spread across all areas. So if you look at pre-K to 12, we looked at all of those areas. We have not identified to them who that might be yet, because we are waiting. We're looking at the separation incentive program, hoping to offset not having to do those layoffs. But what that would affect is class size. So looking at classes where we have buildings where we have low enrollment. So we have some classes that are currently running at 14. So we can look at, perhaps reducing a classroom. Where that is tricky is, it's always easier to reduce a class, having been a principal in a larger school, it's always easier to reduce a classroom in a larger school than in a smaller school, because you just don't have that wiggle room. But we will be reducing, so in that is looking at enrollment and reducing teachers. And then when we look at middle and high school, it will be looking at restructuring some of the programmings that the students have. So there will be a loss of something in terms of what students may be receiving, but both middle school and high school principals feel as though through a restructuring, the students will still be able to receive all the things that they need to, but we may have to look at an elective or something that has been offered.
I mean, I know this isn't the purview of the finance committee, but I'll just say, like, it's amazing that we have a class with 14 students. My kids definitely couldn't have that. We had 28 or something, or 30 in there,
Yeah,
but.
yes.
I was here of the days of 32.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But like, I guess I'm wondering, with this kind of, let's say, voluntary, like, whoever wants to take this, whoever steps up to take this, that might not be the best position to lose a teacher, right? Like, maybe we only have, so I guess, will there be like a balance, right? Like, if there's only one AP teacher
Correct.
in the high school and that person wants to take the leave, well, great, but that, we're not gonna leave that blank, right? We're gonna like
Correct.
somehow
No.
shuffle and
Yes.
fill, you know what I'm saying?
We're
Like,
going to transfer,
Yeah.
I mean, we may see ourselves, transferring people into
again,
the
I know
right
it's not a
positions.
finance issue, but I just can't help but ask it.
No, it's not sort of like whoever picks it, then
Right,
those are the ones
then
we're
we're
going to
gonna have a gap there.
I mean,
That wouldn't work out.
but it is true, right? Like, we can't control who will take it, right? So there is possibility
Right.
of, for lack of a better word, a superstar leaving,
Yeah.
and then we have to hire somebody, right? Because too many people take
Right.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Just shuffle it.
Well, we can stop it though,
We
right?
can stop
All
it,
right.
we have the right to stop it.
Yeah,
Anyway,
let's,
sorry, I know, I'm taking.
that's all right, let's keep going. Thanks.
Okay, so then I just wanted to share, I know there's been a lot of conversation about the budget over the years, and this was just a chart showing our per pupil spending over the last 5 years, and just kind of the progress that we've made, which I think is pretty amazing when you think about where some other communities are. So these are our comparative communities that we use kind of for the entire town. They're a little bit different, I think, than the ones that DESE uses, but we had a consultant come in a few years ago and basically do an analysis of communities and figure out who's the closest to us. And, I think that it's telling that we've made a 13.11% commitment in the last, so this shows 21 to 23 because that's the latest data that's available from DESE. And don't forget, we've done 5.5 last year and 5.5 this year. Well, there's other communities that really have suffered and not been able to make as much of a commitment. And then just moving forward into fiscal year 25 and beyond, and then I swear I'm done. We're going to be working with the school committee to procure the firms to do the reviews, and they'll be voting on those on Thursday. We do have a commitment from the schools to review monthly burn rates and share those with the select board and FinCom. We all understand the importance of not having an appropriation deficit. And then I'm advocating for an MOA between the stakeholders, just documenting the use of the salary reserve, that we're using it for this one time, and we understand that. And that it's for the middle school, because it would be my nightmare to open the middle school and not have teachers to put in it.
Yep.
I think that would be a real dereliction of all of our duties. And really just kind of document what our commitments and policy changes are now and post-review, so that we kind of all can have this trust and collaboration built together. And so that's something that we're going to be working on moving forward, and that we hope that the school committee will join us on, and I'm sure that they will. So that's where we are today.
All right, any additional questions?
Well, like the GoFundMe that we're gonna set up?
No.
It's going to be okay.
The bake sale?
Keith or Nancy,
$7 to the police department.
any questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just have one quick question. On the 220,000 for the Medicaid, it sounds like that's a shift from the town to the school, town side to the school side. So doesn't that leave a gap on the town side of 220,000?
It's not. So it's actually a revenue that the school brings in that goes into the general fund and then flows into free cash every year. So there's been a lot of years where actually this has happened at town meeting and they've had to transfer.
Okay.
They haven't had to do that the last couple of years because they've used the Finance Community Reserve and they've used their ESSER funds. But it's not unusual to see in actually every community I've worked in, there's been some kind of agreement with the school department about having the Medicaid money. I think it makes
Okay.
sense to use it as a revenue source moving forward rather than have it flow into free cash so that we can plan
Use it,
better.
yeah.
Yeah, but it certainly is appropriate.
So it never was
don't
part of the
have
general fund
Yes.
revenue? Okay, thanks.
Just revenue, yeah.
Keith?
I had a quick question too.
Okay.
You're good, Keith?
Yeah, can you guys, no, I had a question. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for some of the recommendations that you guys had made as it relates to our budget shortfalls. I apologize if you talked about this already, but can you talk about the frequency to which you guys would be reporting to the Finance Committee as it relates to us moving forward?
Yeah, so the school has committed to meeting with us monthly to review burn rates. I believe that the school committee has asked for even more than that. I think they've asked for every 2 weeks, right? So we ask for monthly because basically we do payroll twice a month and we do our warrant for our expenses twice a month. So we figured that kind of made sense. So we'll meet every month and then we will basically send those reports to you and to the select board for your review as well.
Thank you.
Regina, you had an additional question?
I just want to say thank you for this, and I would add an asterisk to the bottom that everywhere where we said apply for grants to help fund this, that could be in jeopardy if we don't pass this MBTA
Yes,
communities point.
absolutely.
So let's just have everyone recognize that point.
Yeah. I thought the same thing. I mean, it makes it so important now that we comply with the law, because we can't afford to lose any of these grants.
Yeah.
They're
All right.
already
Every
already
dollar.
baked in, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
All right. The next item on our agenda is to approve our open session minutes from April 24th. So those have been in the packet, and I would certainly, at this time, entertain a motion relative to that line.
I move approval of open session open session minutes from April 24, 2024.
Do we have a second? Second by Brianna, and Eva, really, but we'll give it to Brianna because her name starts with a B. It comes first alphabetically. Okay, so any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote, a roll call vote. Chris Allen,
Yes.
Brianna Stetson,
Yes.
Keith Cheney,
Yes.
Eva Pastor,
Yes.
Nancy Sorrow.
Sorry, just remind me what the rule is, given that I wasn't at that
You,
meeting?
it's your choice. You can vote to approve them, or you don't have, or you could abstain if you were not at the meeting.
Okay, well, if it's okay to vote to approve them, I will vote to approve them as well.
Okay, you can. Regina Keene,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So our open session minutes from April 24th are now approved. And seeing as there's only one thing left on the agenda, and the adjournment, I would certainly entertain a motion for that, if anybody feels so inclined.
Okay, just one point, I just want to remind everybody of the meeting that we
Oh,
had before
yeah.
town meeting.
Yeah.
You know, that we're at, it's at 5:30 and it's in the guidance. You everybody got the room number? I don't have it on my.
I don't have it on me,
I'm
but
gonna follow somebody. Hopefully I get there the same
we'll,
time. I followed you
we'll-
last
you did. We'll get you there. Don't you worry.
Okay, I just
We'll,
want
be
to.
there
we'll,
for 5.
you know what? Since Dustin didn't show up tonight, we'll have him get out there with some
Oh,
flags.
perfect.
How about that?
I'll probably get there at 5:15.
All right. All right. Thank
We
you.
have to check
Good,
in, right?
good reminder. Yes, you do have to
Yeah.
check in. Yes.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Motion
Second.
made by Chris Allen, seconded by Eva. All those. No, we got to do roll call. Chris Allen.
Yes.
Brianna Stetson.
Yes.
Keith Cheney.
Yes.
Eva Pastor.
Yes.
Nancy Zara.
Yes.
Regina Keene.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. We are adjourned at 8:06 p.m. on May 8th. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.